Shalom. This week's Sedra is Sedras Vayakhel. This week's Sedra begins with an interesting statement that lends knowledge to a topic of great debate in contemporary times. The Sedra starts with Moshe gathering the people to hear about more mitzvos in the Torah. Moshe called the whole community of the children of Israel to assemble, Vayakhel, and he said to them, "These are the things that God commanded to make. 6 days' work shall be done, but on the seventh day you shall have sanctity, a day of complete rest to the Lord. Whoever performs work on this day shall be put to death." In warning the people not to do work on the seventh day of the week, God seems to stress that for 6 days one should work. The word used to connote work, malacha, doesn't necessarily mean work for a job, but rather refers to being creative. The creativity and productivity forbidden on Shabbos is prohibited whether or not one gets paid for that work. This week Hashem seems to encourage productivity for 6 days a week. We find a strong push to work for a living in Pirkei Avos, as it explains. Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, would say, "Beautiful is the study of Torah with the way of the world, for the toil of them both causes sin to be forgotten." Ultimately, all Torah study that is not accompanied with work is destined to cease and to cause sin. Later in Pirkei Avos, Shammai is quoted as having taught, "Love work, loathe mastery over others, and avoid intimacy with the government." Maimonides wrote, "The great sages of Israel included woodchoppers, water drawers, and blind men. Despite these difficulties, they were occupied with Torah study day and night, and were included among those who transmitted the Torah's teachings from master to student in a chain stretching back all the way to Moshe, our teacher." Maimonides also wrote, "Anyone who comes to the conclusion that he should involve himself in Torah study without doing work and derive his livelihood from charity desecrates God's name, dishonors the Torah, extinguishes the light of faith, brings evil upon himself, and forfeits the world to come. For it is forbidden to derive benefit from the words of the Torah in this world. It is a tremendous advantage for a person to derive his livelihood from his own efforts. This attribute was possessed by the pious of the early generations. In this manner, one will merit all types of honor and benefit in this world and in the world to come." At the same time, we find statements to the opposite, explaining the drawbacks of work. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, we find, said in Pirkei Avos, he would say, "One who accepts upon himself the yoke of Torah is exempted from the yoke of worldly cares. But one who casts off the yoke of Torah is saddled with the yoke of government duties and the yoke of worldly cares." Later in Pirkei Avos it states, Rabbi Meir would say, "Engage minimally in business and occupy yourself with Torah. Be humble before every man. If you neglect the Torah, there will be many more causes for neglect before you. If you toil much in Torah, there is much reward to give to you." How do we understand these contradictory comments, some pushing us to work, and at the same time, others pushing us to study more and work less? A well-known saying from the Rambam will help us. The two extremes of each trait, which are at a distance from one another, do not reflect a proper path. The straight path involves discovering the midpoint of each and every trait. By making Torah study our priority and work a necessary part of our lives, we ensure a proper approach. It's the approach which puts sufficient stress on making a living so that you don't depend on anyone else and aren't tempted to steal, while at the same time making sure that our priority is always the accomplishment in Torah study. Shabbat Shalom.